Over the past couple of demos that I've done, platters, I've had a couple of people approach me and ask me how it is you take the foot off of the bottom of a platter. I don't have a vacuum chuck, so I wanted to talk about a couple of different ways that you can take the foot off the bottom of a platter. I, of course, don't have a platter. I have a bowl. This is a piece of apple, which I turned a couple of weeks ago. I turned it, I thought it was still pretty wet, and I expected it to move. When I turn a bowl that I expect to move, I usually don't take the foot or the tenon off the bottom of the bowl right away. I'll turn the bowl, I'll put it in the house, I will let it dry and let it move. And then, after a couple of weeks, I'll take off the foot, and that way we're pretty safe that the bowl is going to sit nice and steady, I guess, on the table. So this one is only about 12.5 inches in diameter. I don't have a vacuum chuck, so I'm going to show you two different ways that you can do this. The first one is with a Longworth chuck. Now, a Longworth chuck is a very big disc. You can buy these commercially, and you can also make them. I've seen them made out of MDF and plywood. They're very handy, but they do cost a little bit. They are kind of expensive. As you rotate these two discs, these posts, which have little rubber protectors on them, slide in and out. They're pretty symmetrical, and they grasp onto the edge of the bowl. You are pretty limited. You have to turn these at relatively slow speeds. It's not the world's most secure fit. I've had the bowls pop out of them before. So when I do use these, I keep the tail stock in place as well. But these mount basically in a standard chuck, and then hold your bowl pretty securely for taking the foot off the bottom. Another thing that you can do if you don't want to invest in this is you could sacrifice a piece of MDF that's cut just a little bit bigger than the outside diameter of your bowl or your platter, and then go in with a parting tool to create a little edge. Your bowl then can sit into that piece of MDF. That little edge will keep it from moving side to side, and your tail stock will hold it in place. So those are a couple of ways. I'm not going to use this today. What I want to do is to be able to show you a way that we can take the foot off the bowl without having, I guess, all the expensive equipment. So, first thing I'm going to do in my chuck, I have, you could put a piece of wood right up against this chuck. The problem with doing that, with butting any of your projects up against this, is it's metal, it's got sharp edges, it'll leave marks and it'll leave indentations, and when you spent so much time finishing a piece of wood, that can be a little disheartening to see the damage that will do. So what I made is simply just a piece of MDF. This one's about 3.5 inches in diameter. I just simply cut a circle. Out of that circle in the back, I cut a tenon that will grab with the chuck. On the surface of this, I have glued on just a 1/8 inch piece of foam rubber. And actually what this is a mouse pad. Bought it at a local store for about $3, and you can get quite a few of these out of there. This one's getting pretty beat up, and it's going to need to be replaced pretty soon, but they work really well. Another thing that this does is, because you're not actually grabbing onto your piece of wood, this actually provides a little bit of traction, especially when you're doing rough turning. And this surface is right up against the wood, you won't get any slippage, so it actually works really well. Now, the problem with the black rubber, of course, is that if I put this up against the inside of my finished bowl, it's going to leave some black marks, and I don't want to leave any black marks. So once I mount that in the chuck, because we're doing a finished piece here, and I want to keep the inside looking nice, all I have is a half a sheet of paper towel and a little blue tape, and all I'm going to do is tape the paper towel right onto the chuck. I only need 2 pieces. Now, there are some other types of foam rubber that you can find at some of your craft stores that aren't black and will not mar your project, but for now, this is what I have to work with, so this is what we're going to do. We'll get our banjo out of the way, and what we're going to bring in is our tailstock center. All we're going to do is marry those two right up against. The pad is sitting on the inside of the bowl, probably just less than ½ an inch away from where we're working, so it provides a nice stable working surface, and to keep this pinned into place. Okay. We're going to set our tool rest up, make sure we have plenty of room, turn our speed down, turn this on nice and slow, make sure that everything's running nice and true, and this is actually running very true. So with this, we can start taking off the bottom of the bowl. Just take a break there to get my tools ready. But all I'm going to use right now is a 3/8 inch swept back bowl gouge. Using a pull cut. Nice and easy. And we're just going to chisel away. See what I've done is I've taken all of it off except for that, well, ½ inch maybe, that is actually holding the bowl in place. I don't want to get that too thin or take that away just yet, because that's really the only thing that's keeping us on the lathe right here. So now with a push cut, I'm just going to even this bottom out a little bit. Shavings out of there. And then one thing that I can use is a straight edge. It's just a little 6-inch ruler, and I can hold it up to just about the surface, and I can get an idea by the light that I see between the ruler and the bowl just how flat I'm making the bottom. I don't tend to make the bottoms of the bowls flat. I want to make them a little bit concave. Not too much. I certainly don't want to cut through the bottom of my bowl, but I want a little bit of concave, and that way if I get movement in the bowl or something, the bowl is always just sitting on the outside edge as opposed to hitting any surface here in the middle. Okay. So we're doing okay. We're going to take down one more cut. And when I do that, I probably have about not quite 1/8 of an inch difference from the outside rim to the inside of the bowl. So just a little bit of concave. Now we're going to turn off the lathe, and we're going to try to take a look at what kind of a finish we're getting. It's okay. It's not great, but we're going to be able to sand that up pretty easily using the system. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is move this just a little bit closer. And I'm going to go to just a spindle gouge, 3/8 inch spindle gouge. And I have to raise my tool rest just a little bit. Now what we're going to do is try to get a finish cut, something a little bit nicer. I'm going to come all the way from the edge. Really going to have to be careful to avoid skating up the side of our bowl. There were a couple of sections on this bowl that I needed to repair, so what I'm making sure I'm doing is not opening up any cracks or anything in it. Okay. We are satisfied where that's going to be. Now we can sand the bottom of the bowl. And that looks pretty good. Okay, now I still have, oh boy, ½ inch, 5/8 of an inch worth of wood left in here that I'm going to need to get rid of. I don't want to have to try to chisel and carve that much away. I want it significantly smaller than that. So I'm going to go to a detailed spindle gouge and tool rest a little bit further away. Essentially what I'm going to do, let's see if I can't give you a little better close-up there. Now, okay, that's about as close in as I can get without it going blurry on me, but I just wanted to point out two things here. This is the bottom surface of the bowl here, okay? And you can see that where I'm actually going to cut this nub off is about 1/16, maybe 1/8 of an inch off of the surface of the bowl. And the reason is that once this piece separates from the rest of the bowl, there's going to be torn fibers. Okay, there's going to be fibers that tear within this little gap right here. And what I don't want to do is for those fibers to turn into or tear out of, I guess, the nice surface of the bowl. They'll turn out of that little nub that we've left on the bottom, and that little nub is something, of course, we're going to carve and sand away. So we won't have too much to worry about in that regard. So I've taken this down just about as far as I want to. There's really only about, oh, maybe 1/4 of an inch of wood holding this thing on the lathe. So of course we're going with gentle cuts. Now two things can happen. I don't have a whole lot of space here to get the tools in there, but I could cut that down small enough where I could just break it off. Or the safest way to do it is to leave it in place where it is now. It's still stable on the lathe. And actually just take in a little pull saw or something and just cut that down. I could take a chance and break it, but again, I risk pulling those fibers from the bottom of the bowl. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And that's all that we have left on there. So now we're going to take it over to the carving bench and we're going to cut that away. So here we are. This is where I do most of the carving. And I have to tell you, I cheated a little bit because when I was carrying this over, this broke off. But luckily, as we can see, it broke off high because we left this nub on there. So all of the broken fibers are up on that nub and not down in the surface of the bowl. So now I'm just going to take my chisel, keeping my fingers out of the way. Shave that down smooth. From there, just a piece of sandpaper. I can start probably with a 150 or a 120. I can see where that ring is just a little bit, plus a couple of little high facets that I didn't get out of there entirely when I was taking it down. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get in there with the tools that close. But now, just working close to the center of the bowl, just using a little sanding block to keep everything and our 400 grit. There it is. That is how you take the foot off the bottom of the bowl without any special tools at all.